Police-related headlines, phone calls, heated debates, topics that matter to you. Nothing is off limits. The only show hosted by police for society. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Policing Black and White. And now your host, TJ Block.
Ship lies waiting in the bay.
All right, I love it. I love the new intro. And a little bit of Dropkick Murphys in there. Thanks to our producer for getting some shit done around here. All right, slowly turning into a semi-professional show. When you start to get some offers and advertising and some offers from other media outlets, all of a sudden it's okay to spend money. Go figure, huh? I don't know. What do I know? One thing I do know is how to be a cop. Ha ha! You like that transition, don't you? That's right. Just a little taste of professional broadcasting at its best. Anyway, for real, many people have written in asking about the hiring process and what departments look for when hiring and all that good stuff. And I think some of it is based on people wanting to be police officers. But I think a majority of the people seem to wonder what the criteria is. And maybe that's the problem with law enforcement today, that maybe it isn't strict enough, or maybe the screening process isn't done the right way. To me, I think it's great because I don't see a huge problem out there in society, but other people do. So I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that's my belief. And obviously this show is all about being honest and putting everything out there. So if society believes that there's a problem out there with law enforcement, well, that's why we're here. Let me start out by saying that every department is different when it comes to hiring police officers. But they essentially follow the same format for the most part. The whole process obviously starts with the initial application. The application itself, the first one I should say, is about 40 pages. And it asks questions like, why do you want to work for this department? And why do you want to be a police officer? It's very similar to what you would see on a normal job application, but it does go in depth a little bit more. It does ask about your personal information, obviously, your address, social security, skin color, education. Again, very similar to a normal application. Then it starts to ask about your financial situation, such as your credit rating and how much you're in debt. And at first I was like, why the heck would they want to know that? I understand maybe paying your stuff on time it shows responsibility, but when I asked about it, they actually said, the same thing, that it does show some responsibility, but they don't want police officers out there that have a lot of debt, just because maybe they're more inclined to steal. That's the answer that I was given by multiple people, and that makes sense. And a lot of people don't know that, but that's true. If an applicant has a lot of debt, a lot of the departments will reject you just based on that fact alone. Then it gets into some questions that I thought were just funny. Do you object to wearing a uniform? Or are you willing to work all hours? Stuff like that. And if you haven't thought about that by the time you reach that point in the application, I think maybe you don't know what policing's all about. But yeah, you're going to have to wear a uniform, and yeah, you're probably going to have to work some crazy hours. But hey, that comes with the territory, right? It comes with the amazing pay, right? Anyway, then it asks about your jobs for the past 10 years and your addresses and all that good stuff. And then it gets to the fun part that everyone always wants to know the answers to, and that's the use of drugs and alcohol. And a lot of people are interested in this section. And again, I think it's applicants, and I also think it's just a regular Joe Blow out there, Joe Blow citizen, just asking, what criteria do you need to become a cop? Is the officers out there, have they tried cocaine? Have they smoked marijuana? Did they once have a drinking problem? A lot of people wonder that. So hopefully at the end of this show, you'll know what most departments look for and what will reject an officer. And remember, each department is different. It does first ask you how much do you consume alcohol, and listen, if you answer every day and you have a drinking problem, obviously you're going to be rejected. Some departments don't mind 1 or 2 days. Some departments don't want any alcohol. So, again, it just matters on the department, but I'm giving you a general idea here. Then it specifically asks, have you ever used marijuana? And the reason why I think it specifically asks that is because it's out there more than anything, except for pain pills, which we learned in the last radio show, right? Right. You have to be honest on a police application for many reasons. One is, especially my department, is they do polygraph you. They put you on a lie detector machine. And also, if you lie on there, at some point it will come back to haunt you, and you want to be 6 years in your career as a police officer, learn the ropes, go through the academy, and then have something that maybe wasn't even that crazy or important that you just felt like you needed to leave out, it'll come back to haunt you and you'll lose your job. If any department sees dishonesty, that is like the number one thing that's going to get you fired. If there are applicants out there listening, remember, be honest. That is the best thing that you can do. And if they disqualify you for it, then you know that maybe this isn't the right job for you. Maybe your experiences in the past have removed you from the chance of being a police officer. And good, as well as it should. Maybe that experience or maybe that habit will return. And, we can't have cops out there lying or with a drug problem. And then they specifically ask about marijuana, just because, like we said, it's out there so much. And I put on my application, because again, honesty is everything, that I smoked marijuana 3 times in my life. And I would say about 10 years had passed when I applied for the police officer position. They really do want to know how long it's been, why you stopped, and many other questions associated with marijuana. Obviously, it asks about all other illicit drugs, such as coke, heroin, ecstasy. You get the idea. It is a pretty basic rule across the board that if you use any illegal drugs besides weed, it's usually an automatic disqualifier. Not all departments, but most. The larger departments, like NYPD, Chicago, LAPD, they're more likely to look past some of the stuff that a smaller department probably wouldn't be able to look past. So I hope that makes sense. Almost all departments are going to disqualify anyone who's used any illegal drug, including marijuana, within 2 or 3 years of the application. They probably just figure that that's too close and that problem may come back. Most departments like to see at least 5 years, if not even 10 years. They obviously ask about your criminal record. Any felon is immediately disqualified because, well, A, they're heavier criminals, but B, they're not allowed to carry a firearm. And, quick story actually. I remember a convicted felon of, I believe, more than one felony in my area ran for sheriff in a pretty decent sized city. He was able to do this because sheriffs, sitting in an office or whatever, they're not required to carry a firearm. And he stayed in the running to the very end and got a lot of votes, believe it or not. So yeah, he almost became a sheriff, and he was also a felon. But they didn't disqualify him; they let him run. So, if you do have a bad history out there, maybe run for sheriff. I don't know. Anyway, back to the application. Just to finish up, they ask you references, friends, family. Your driving history obviously is very important since most of your time is spent in a car. If you've had a ticket or two in the past, that's usually not the worst thing in the world, but if you received a ticket a month ago or a year ago, yeah, that's going to be a problem. Because again, not enough time has passed to show that you've resolved that problem. And then, of course, you have to sign 10 different pages, giving them access to your entire life, credit, sometimes medical history. Everything you can think of, they pretty much want access to. Keep that in mind, because it's really hard to hide anything in your past when you're applying to be a police officer. So, once you submit the application, again, I didn't want to spend too much time on that, because who wants to go line by line on an application? But once you submit the application and they have not disqualified you, they will usually ask you to participate in some type of physical test. Every department out there wants, they don't want the big, and I'm going to say, they don't want the big, fat, slobby guy out there. And a lot of you are saying, well, what do you mean? I see fat cops all the time. And usually they didn't start out that way. Police officers, their shifts and, the work itself, they don't get the best food choices. And a lot of times you will start scarfing down fast food donuts just because you don't have time to eat anything else. So they got fat usually after the academy. Some departments simply have like a push-up, sit-up test. Others just compare your height and weight. I mean, sometimes that's all they want, just to make sure your body mass index, or if you've heard BMI, they just want to make sure that that's not outrageous. In some departments, that's all they want to see. My department used a pretty standard across-the-board physical test. They made us run through a course that included sit-ups, push-ups, running, carrying a dummy that weighs about 125 pounds. You got to open heavy doors during the course. You got to run up and down stairs. Stuff, you get the idea. Stuff like that. And they use a test that is about a quarter of what you'll have to pass at the end of the academy. So they understand that, listen, you may not be in the best shape now, but after we train you and show you how to get in shape, you better be able to pass a pretty hard test, a pretty grueling physical test. Now, I am not a runner. I never was a runner, but I made sure I could do about 50 push-ups and 50 sit-ups during a 3-mile run just to prepare for the academy, and that seemed to be perfect. And believe me, I did not start at 3 miles. I started at 1 mile and gradually worked up to 3 miles, and that's where I stopped. My department also added a written test after the physical test. I think it was to see if you can handle certain things under stress, but also they wanted to see if you can answer simple math and English questions. They wanted to, pretty much the answer that I got is they want to make sure that you can read and do math at least a first-year college level. Some departments require a high school diploma. Some departments require 2 years, like the NYPD. And some departments require a bachelor's degree. It changes from department to department. It also, at the same test with the math and English at the end, it also included a personality test, just to make sure that the applicant is the right personality to be a police officer. They don't want an aggressive officer, but they don't want too passive of an officer either. So they use that to measure if you fit in the realm of being a good cop based on, good averages from past officers. Now, after you pass those two elements, then the real application comes. And when I say the real application, that first written one I said, pretty general, just like a regular application, they ask the same exact questions as the first one, maybe to look for some consistency. Then they ask about 100 additional, if not 200 additional ones, such as like your friends, phone numbers, your family, any family troubles, personal beliefs about police, detailed financial history. I mean, they want to know every account that you have. Just stuff like that. And, your upbringing. They want to talk to your neighbors, so they ask about how to get in contact with them. I mean, so many questions. And again, you've got to be honest. So a lot of the things I couldn't remember, so it took me about 2 weeks to gather the information that I needed to answer the questions properly. Once they receive that lengthy application and you pass those items, then you're kind of considered a real applicant. The reason why I say that is once a department starts spending money on you, then I believe that they really are considering you. Like, drug testing, paying someone to look into you, that type of stuff. They usually hire an investigator from their own department or detective just to investigate you, just like a criminal, kinda. They'll interview you, they'll ask you questions, pretty much every question under the sun. They'll ask you about your upbringing, glitches in your credit report, how you feel about cops. They'll go to your neighbor's house or talk to them on the phone. They'll talk to your parents. They'll talk to all your close friends. It very much is like a criminal investigation on you. It's pretty cool. You bring out things that you don't even remember taking place. So this is the department's first real one-on-one contact with you, meeting with the investigator. I remember seeing applicants walk into their first interview with like jeans and a t-shirt. I even saw one guy wear a bandana. I mean, just looking like a slob and a moron. If anyone out there is going through or about to go through the hiring process, wear a fucking suit. Jesus, show some class. It can only help. It can't hurt you. After that, my department made me take about a 600-question psychological written test that asked questions like, pick your personality, multiple choice, and what animal would you consider yourself? They would ask the same type of question 4 or 6 different ways also, just to make sure you're not full of shit, to make sure there's consistency there. It was pretty grueling. 600 questions. That's a lot of questions at one time. During all this, I did police ride-alongs too. I wanted to make sure that I was making some connections before I got hired, if I was going to get hired, just so I wouldn't go into a group of people I didn't know. And B, I wanted to make sure that this was something I really wanted to do. The academy does a great job of weeding out the people that really don't need to be police, but it doesn't get rid of everybody. And I think ride-alongs is a very good way to see if policing is something that you want to do. And if the citizens out there, they don't know, most departments offer it to just regular citizens too. So if you want to learn about police, besides my radio show, which is the best way possible, right? Doing ride-alongs is an unbelievable way to learn what police officers go through. It's amazing. So I encourage anyone out there does want to know what being a police officer is like or has some questions. You get to be one-on-one with an officer in a car, so you get to ask him any question you want. Plus, you get to see what he goes through. So I encourage you out there to use the ride-along program if you're a department officer. Anyway, I got off track there. Let me get back to process here. If you pass pretty much everything that I've mentioned, then you'll usually get what's called a conditional offer, and that's what my department used. My department's conditions were I had to pass a panel interview or an oral board, a polygraph or a lie detector test, and a psychological interview. Those were the 3 things that my department said. If we're going to hire you if you pass these 3 things. So that was a pretty exciting day for me, but I knew I was nowhere close to being hired yet. So the oral board, like I just mentioned, is pretty interesting. Let me tell you about mine. If I'm going to try to remember. Again, it was 7 or 8 years ago at this point. But I walked into a large room, and similar to like a banquet hall, like a wedding would be in. I walked across the room to see a long table set up for the officers that were going to interview me. I think there were about 4 chairs behind this long table. And then in front of that long table was just this one metal, old-looking chair. So seriously, picture a ballroom, like at a wedding, a big one, with just one chair in the middle. That's what I felt like. And just 4 officers staring at you, judging your future. It is intimidating, obviously done on purpose. So then these 3 or 4 officers shoot question after question. Mine was like a speed round from a quiz show. Just once you answer, next question, next question, next question, just to see if you can handle the stress. And they wanted to make sure that you weren't lying. They didn't want to give you time to make something up in between each question. So the oral board was probably the most intimidating part of the application process. I mean, just imagine that. You're just sitting in a chair and just 5 of maybe your future bosses are just shooting every question at you, and even outlandish ones just to throw you off track. Like, they would ask, what do you think about a police officer career? Then right after that, they'd say, do you have any pets? They would just do everything possible to throw you off track. So that was definitely the most interesting part of the application process as well. And you know those officers got a good laugh at some of the guys that walked in and just couldn't handle it. Then came the polygraph, or lie detector test. And this was interesting. They asked about, 100, 150 questions relating to drugs, stealing. They even asked questions like, have you ever taken a pen from a business and not returned it? Stuff like that. They even asked if I ever raped a farm animal. Yeah. That's true. Did I ever rape a farm animal? And I think answering that one yes would pretty much disqualify you, and you may even leave in handcuffs. Anyway, then I had a one-on-one session with a psychologist who asked me numerous questions about me and my history. He really focused on a question about what animal I consider myself to be. Like, in other words, what animal would you describe yourself as? That's what he asked. And I think I said something like dog, but later on I talked to some people, and there's certain animals, and really I don't want to say what it is, because I want, applicants to be fair out there. But there are certain animals that they really don't like you to describe yourself as. So maybe they show some aggression or violence, something like that. I don't know if that necessarily disqualifies you, but it's the totality of the application at this point. After all the oral boards, the lie detectors, the ridiculous amount of pages being filled out and questions, then finally came the decision to let me in the academy or not. And I remember getting that decision like it was yesterday. After 9 months of going through what I just told you about, 9 months, I received a very thin envelope in the mail from the city, and I started to tear up because I was told if it's a thin envelope, you're done. It only takes 1 page to tell you you're not in the next academy. And I did. I started to tear up because I had been checking the mailbox for like 4 months at that point. Just eager. I wanted to be a police officer. And the letter said, I opened it, I was by myself, and I remember the letter said that I was invited to be a member of the upcoming police academy class. And I had to read it like 3 or 4 times. I was like, does that mean I'm in? Is it a maybe? But nope, I was in. I just yelled and screamed. I was so happy. I was jumping in the air. And then I quickly ran back to call everyone I knew. I was so proud. I was about to be a part of something that a lot of people couldn't be. And God, I couldn't have been more excited. Then came the academy. And the academy was the best and worst part of my career, I would say. Before we even go into this, I think it's important, and I worked hard on this, to take a phone call from a drill sergeant. One you would normally find in a police academy or a military-type boot camp setting. He is very well known for getting the best out of people. People have called him like the God's gift to military. I think he has a lot to offer on the show. Even though he's a little rough around the edges, I think he can bring something to this show that would make you understand how hard the police academy really is. But without further ado, let's get to the call. Well, welcome to the show, sir. Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us who you are?
I am Gunnery Sergeant Hartman. From now on, you will speak only when spoken to.
Okay, I mean, it's my show, but whatever. Like I said, you're the genius drill instructor, so go ahead.
You are the lowest form of life on Earth.
You don't even know me. You're kind of an asshole.
You will not like me. What's your name, scumbag?
TJ Block? Jesus.
Who said that?
I'm the only one on the phone, sir. Are you okay?
Well, no shit. What have we got here? A fucking comedian. I admire your honesty. Hell, I like you. You can come over to my house and fuck my sister. What's your excuse?
What the hell are you talking about? And why are you yelling?
I'm asking the fucking questions here. Are you shook up? Are you nervous?
Sir?
Sir what? Are you about to call me an asshole?
Well, yeah, kinda.
Did your parents have any children that lived? Well, any fucking time, sweetheart.
I'm not gonna answer that.
Get on your knees, scumbag!
Okay, that's it. I'm done with this. I'm not gonna do sexual favors for you. Wow, what a call, huh? Wow, what horrible production as well. Our call-taking skills, quote-unquote, will get better, I promise, but I hope, at least. Anyway, let me bring you to my first day in the academy with a drill sergeant that seriously was similar to the one you just heard. I'm not kidding. But before we go into the academy, let's hear from one of our sponsors. I'd like to welcome Street Cop Gear as a new sponsor to the show, and this could not be a better fit. Street Cop Gear offers products such as custom radio holders, handcuff cases, and really cool and unique pistol and magazine holders, just to name a few. Street Cop Gear is owned by a police officer with over 18 years experience, folks. I know this officer. He's a great guy. He's a veteran. He's been part of the military. There's no better person to learn from or buy stuff from than this officer. The company's built on the philosophy that the finest police gear doesn't have to break the bank. The best part about this company is each item is handmade by real cops. What more could you ask for? Seriously. Visit their website at streetcopgear.com to learn more about their products and learn about the North Carolina Concealed Handgun course. Use this course to obtain your concealed carry permit and learn shooting skills and safety measures from an officer who truly cares about his students. You can use streetcopgear.com to transfer gun ownership in North Carolina for the low price of just $20. Streetcopgear.com, made for cops, tested by cops, and manufactured by cops. Where were we? Oh yeah, my first day in the academy. They really like to amp up the stress to make sure that you can handle it, especially on the first couple days, because they want to weed out the people that can't handle it. So if they get them out early, then they can really focus on the people that need the academy and need the training. So there I was on the first day in a room with about 40 other complete strangers. Larger cities, they have thousands of people in their academy, like the NYPD, bigger cities, but mine was about 40 people. I remember standing at attention with my hands behind my back, making sure not to move the slightest bit, because A, I didn't know when the drill sergeant was going to walk in, and B, I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of 39 other people on my first day. I wanted them to know that I was in it, and I was in it with them, and we were in it together. And this was hard, because we stood there for about 20 minutes, not talking, completely silent, again, with our hands behind our back, just staring straight forward at either the person in front of you or the wall. Then, our instructor kicked open the door and just started screaming at us. And in came 5 other of the training staff, just in our faces, screaming, calling us names, putting as much verbal pressure on us as possible, just to see if we'd snap. One person passed out, either from being called so many names or standing there for so long, but he just went back and passed out. One other guy started crying. I mean, these are the people that obviously needed to be weeded out. They knew what they were doing. There was so much yelling that I seriously couldn't hear well until the next day or two. That's how bad it was. Most people think that the academy is mostly physical and to get you in shape, but there's so many different aspects to it. My academy was almost 7 months long, and only about a quarter of the time was spent on physical stuff. Physical stuff is important, don't get me wrong, but they have to fit a lot into 7 months. The other time was mostly filled with classroom time and simply just testing. You have to learn as many laws as possible and review ethics and standards and learn how the department runs things and all this crazy stuff, within as much as you can in that 7 months. But I remember, every morning, we went 5 days a week, 8 to 5 pretty much, and every morning we would line up outside. It didn't matter how cold it was. It didn't matter how hot it was. We would line up outside, and our drill instructor would go one at a time to each person while we're standing there at attention, just like I told you before, not moving, and ask us either a 10 code, like a radio police code, or he would ask us about a specific case law every morning. And if you got the question wrong and you didn't study the night before, oh my God. then you did experience the physical part. Gosh, and that was so intimidating. But you learned. It made you learn. And let me tell you that. We got tased. We got pepper sprayed. We got bruised. Some people suffered broken bones and bloody lips like myself, just from the physical training and the fighting that they teach you. They literally teach you to fight for your life. And it is, boys, it's something else, man. I remember ice packs and heating pads, just getting through the physical training. My gosh, was it hard. And then we learned how to shoot. I had never fired a handgun until I went into the academy. Some people say that's good because they teach you the proper way and you have good fundamentals when you go in. But I was going, I was in the South. I was going against guys that have shot their whole lives. And believe it or not, I shot better than a lot of them because I learned the fundamentals. I learned how to shoot the correct way, and it really did show. And then we learned how to talk to people. But the main thing that we learned in the academy was we learned how to give ourselves the best chance to walk out of any situation alive. That's basically what it came down to. And I formed bonds and friendships in the academy that are still, to this day, very strong, that are some of my best friends. Some of the stories, oh my God, I wish I remembered them all. Let me think. We had these wooden owls outside the building that were about, 2 feet tall and had these huge, glowing, mysterious eyes. They were made out of wood, and they weren't light either. They were pretty heavy. One day, my classmates put one under my desk without me knowing, and I sat down. I had no idea it was there, obviously. And during a serious lecture we were receiving, my leg brushed against it, and I looked down, and I saw those huge owl eyes just staring back at me, and I screamed like a girl in the middle of this silent classroom. Oh my God, was I embarrassed. And of course the whole class was onto it. I didn't think the instructor was onto it. So that was pretty good. But I did some of the pranking too. I did a lot of the pranking, believe it or not. I hid in a regular size like high school locker in the changing room and jumped out at someone who was trying to get into the same locker. And the funny part is that person without hesitation punched me right in the head when I did it, just as his reaction, which was funny in itself. It almost knocked me out. It was a hard punch. The price you got to pay to be a prankster, right? Let's see if there's any. Oh, I remember it. I think one of the better pranks was a trick we did with my buddy's rolling seat in the classroom. Let me try to set this up for you as best as I can, and then we'll move on. Our classroom had assigned seats, and as you entered the room, you were never, ever to sit until everyone in the classroom was behind their own chair and ready to sit, and we waited to receive the command from our instructor, who would yell at the top of his lungs, quote-unquote, take seats. We had to wait for that command and sit together as a group, because they want to teach you to do everything, with a partner or in a group if you can. And we would sit together, obviously as a group, and it was like watching, if you ever seen the Rockettes kick, they do it all at the same time. That's what they wanted to see when we took our seats and sat down. The chairs were on wheels and obviously had to be pushed in any time we were not in it. They wanted the classroom neat. So you had to push in your chair every time you weren't in it. So, during a break when everyone was out of the room, I took enough duct tape to probably tape a bear to a tree. I'm serious. And tape and I took the tape and I taped my classmate's chair in a way in which he wouldn't be able to pull it out. I taped it to the desk pole underneath. I really taped this thing. So we were all standing there in the classroom. We had all come in from working out. We're waiting for our same drill instructor, our intimidating drill instructor, to yell, take seats. We were waiting for that command. And when he did, we all sat, and my classmate, whose chair I taped, was left just trying to roll his chair out, like, violently and just using all the muscles he had to get this chair out, and it just would not move. You would have thought there was $1 million on this chair, the way he was trying to get to it, and we're just laughing, and he cannot get this chair out, and he's just standing there, and the instructor's screaming and yelling at him, take your seat, what's the matter with you? Just screaming at the top of his lungs. And I think the instructor caught on, and then it got even worse. And finally, he threw his arms up and just sat on the floor because he could not get his seat out. Oh, man, was that a funny time. Maybe you had to be there, maybe not, but gosh, that was a good prank. Anyway, where were we? Okay, after about 7 months of constant testing, running, studying, aches and pains, I got to graduate and go into field training. And some will say, and I truly believe, that that's where you really learn how to be a police officer. Some training officers, even in my department, would say, the first thing they would say was, okay, forget about everything you learned in the academy. I'm going to teach you how to be a cop. I didn't agree with that because the academy taught you so much of what you need to be a good cop. But some departments don't even have field training. Luckily, mine did. And mine field training was probably the top 10 best in the nation for training. I mean, they put a lot into this program. It was incredible. You journaled everything. You documented everything. I mean, you were constantly graded on your performance. And I think that's good. I think it was about 16 weeks or so in field training. And I actually ended up becoming a training officer towards the end of my career. Field training is for another show, and that should make for some good laughs and some good radio as well, but that's for another time. As a cop, you just must constantly review and learn new laws and new regulations and new rules within your own department. It's just a constant studying. It doesn't stop at the academy. A lot of people don't realize that. You know, just keep this in mind. Attorneys, lawyers, they get to take days, weeks, even months to review your case or put it before a judge. And, you know, the same facts that they're using to decide the person's fate and judgment over those weeks or months, we had to make sometimes in split seconds. So give us some credit, folks. We do some pretty amazing things, and a lot of it comes from our training, because most people will say, and I agree, is that as a police officer, you're only as good as your training. And that's true. And I know I would not be alive today if my department didn't train and ingrain things in my head. And I'm not just talking about my shooting, which I've mentioned a couple times. There are other times where I probably wouldn't have made it out alive if I didn't have the training that my department offered. So I owe them so much. But I also gave them a lot too, so it was a give and take, your relationship. You know, we do it all to serve the community and make our mortgage payment, you know, sometimes. And we get to experience the honor of wearing that badge day in and day out, and that in itself is an incredible feeling. You know, we have a tough job out there, we really do, and I still don't understand why society feels the need to make our jobs so much harder than they have to be. I just don't get it. They constantly need to grade us and question us. And listen, there has to be some balance to this system. I agree. But it's getting to the point where they question almost everything the officers do out there. And to me, that's just wrong. This country was based on laws being enforced by police officers who have discretion. You may not agree with that officer's discretion, but he's following the rules, and you really can't go after an officer who does abide by the law. So just keep that in mind. I think that's important. So we'll leave it at that because I don't want to get on a soapbox. But coming up next, we have some questions and answers that were posted online from our website, and I want to get back to answering them.
Looking for revolution. I have the style, I have the ambition. Read all the authors, I knew the Rostogans. There was a war, but the class war. I was ready to set the world on fire. I was a teenage anarchist.
Alright, like I said before, we just have a question and answer segment here that we did the first couple shows, and I think it's important to get back to it. We're getting so many questions each day that I'm so sorry I can't get to yours as quick as I want to. But for everyone out there who has sent in your question, I will get to it, I promise, either on our website or answer it on here. We're just receiving so many that it may take some time. It may even take a year, I don't know, but we will get to it. You have my word. Question number 1 comes from Anonymous. They ask, why are officers allowed to do checkpoints for DWI and everything else? I feel like this gives them the freedom to stop anyone they want for any reason. Okay, it's a good question, actually. The answer to this is, I think people forget that a driver's license is a privilege. And that's according to your state and federal government. It's a privilege to have a license. That means that you need to follow certain rules and regulations to have that license. And if you break them, you lose it. It gives us the right to do checkpoints for DWIs and your driver's license statuses and registration issues. I will tell you that most states have laws, and a lot of people don't know this, that say officers are not allowed to pick and choose which vehicles are stopped at these checkpoints. You actually can either stop every single car, or you have to stop like every third car or fifth car. And a lot of states require that this be documented before you start the checkpoint, especially for DWI checkpoints. There's a little bit of difference in rules between DWI checkpoints and other checkpoints, especially in my state. But just keep that in mind, that an officer doesn't get to just pick and choose which car he wants to look into. And also, what a lot of people don't realize is officers are allowed to ask you to exit and enter your vehicle during a vehicle stop as many times necessary to complete the stop. You got to be reasonable with this, but a lot of law enforcement falls under reasonable. But yeah, we can ask you to step in and out of the car 20 times if that's what's necessary to complete the stop. So there you go. You may not agree with that answer, but that's the reason police are allowed to carry out checkpoints. Question number 2 comes from Anonymous again. Okay. I've heard there's a large battery of psychological testing officers go through for eligibility. What characteristics are they screening for, such as an officer passes or fails based on demonstrating what attributes or abilities he or she may have? You better already know the answer to this question because we just spent about a half hour or 45 minutes talking about it. So we're going to move on to the next question. How's that? Question 3 is, wow, from Anonymous again. That actually proves a point. A lot of the questions we receive are anonymous because people are so either intimidated or scared to ask police officers certain questions because either their friends will make fun of them, maybe the officer himself or herself will degrade them. But a lot of the questions we receive are anonymous, and that just shouldn't be, and that's what this whole show is about. We want to change that. So anyway, question number 3, last time I got pulled over was because the cops were doing an inspection check, and I was driving my husband's car and got pulled over and given a ticket. My kids were with me in the car, and I was 9 months pregnant, and my husband was mad that I didn't ask him not to give me one. But I feel that I should not ask any questions, just do what the officer asks. Will it make the cop more mad if I would have made excuses and asked him not to give me a ticket? Or just give him my information and take what he gives me? Gosh, that's a question, I probably everyone is asked, right? So I'll try to answer this as best as possible. So how do you get out of a ticket? The answer is, there is no real answer. There really isn't. Every officer is different. For instance, like speeding. If I gave a ticket first of all, I wouldn't even pull you over unless you were going at least 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. I wouldn't even look at you. After that, and I pulled you over, and I run your license. And my general rule was if you hadn't had a ticket within the last, 2 or 3 years, then I would either let you go with a warning or I would reduce the ticket. Now, if you were an asshole, you were getting a ticket no matter what. Some officers have a rule that if the woman or man cries, they're automatically getting a ticket. And other officers say they can't handle someone crying. So just remember, officers are humans. Many officers can relate to having a bad day or simply being in a rush. But you also have to understand that we get lied to every single day in our occupation. I will say that it's important to be respectful and courteous no matter what. If you go to court for that ticket that you got, guess who may be there? That same officer. And if you were a total jerk or a bitch to that officer, he may remember or document that. And if the DA asks the officer what his take is on the matter, he or she may not be so forgiving, let's say. If you truly feel that the reason you were stopped is because of a certain reason, simply tell the officer. Not as an excuse or a way to get out of a ticket. Just tell them. Because it's simply a fact. You know what I mean? If you're going to the hospital because you're about to have a baby, or your husband was just in a car accident, most officers will be pretty forgiving and let you go. I know some officers that have even given people an escort to the hospital. Well, there you go. Everyone who wrote me asking about the application process and how officers are hired, I hope I provided what you were looking for. I really do. Before we close out the show, please continue to write us with your questions and simply your comments. You can go to our website at policingblackandwhite.com, or you can email us at policeingblackandwhite@yahoo.com. You can listen to us on iTunes through our podcast, Policing Black and White, or just check us out on Facebook or YouTube. We have a very cool, simple contest coming up where I think people will be very excited about it. And don't forget about the $10,000 wage coming up with Attorney Shock from the previous show. If you haven't listened to that show, please listen to it. We're also going to announce the big news we've mentioned a couple times. And the big news is actually taking a step forward. So it's even bigger news. But a lot is going on here at Policing Black and White. So please try to keep checking in. And, again, write us. We'd love to hear from you. That's what brings this show to the forefront. Have a great rest of the week, or if you're listening to this before the weekend, have a great weekend. And remember, as always, peace within and peace